Okay, this week we begin a series on Daniel. So we'll be working our way through the book of Daniel, starting this week and ending the first weekend in September. This is one of the big, important books that is very influential, yet we don't always realize how much of our theology comes out of this book here in Daniel. So before we turn now to our text from chapter 2, I'd like to preface by saying, have you ever faced an impossible situation? The book of Daniel is full of impossible situations where God shows and gives direction to Daniel and his friends. So let's listen to how he dealt with this very impossible situation. Our text is Daniel chapter 2, verses 1 through 6 and 17 to 49. In the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His spirit was troubled and his sleep left him. Then the king commanded that the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans be summoned to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king. And the king said to them, I had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream. Then the Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show you the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the word from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be laid in ruins. But if you show the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream and its interpretation. So we skip over all the back and forth there, and it comes down to, they said, that's impossible. So we begin again in verse 17. Then Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, and told them to seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions might not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered him and said, Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you, for you have made known to us the king's matter. Therefore Daniel went in to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus to him, Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste and said thus to him, I have found among the exiles from Judah a man who will make known to the king the interpretation. The king declared to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Are you able to make known to me the dream that I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered the king and said, No wise men, enchanters, magicians, or astrologers can show to the king the mystery that the king has asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head as you lay in the bed are these. To you, O king, as you lay in the bed, came thoughts of what would be after this, and he who reveals mysteries made known to you what is to be. But as for me, this mystery has been revealed to me not because of any wisdom that I have more than all the living, but in order that the interpretation may be made known to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your mind. You saw, O king, and behold, a great image. The image, mighty and of exceeding brightness, stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. The head of this image was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its middle and the thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. As you looked, a stone was cut out by no human hand, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold all together were broken in pieces and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away so that not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream. Now we will tell the king its interpretation. You, O king, the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, and the might, and the glory, and into whose hand he has given wherever they dwell, the children of man, the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heavens, making you rule over them all. You are the head of gold. Another kingdom inferior to you shall arise after you, and yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And there shall be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, because iron breaks to pieces and shatters all things. And like iron that crushes, it shall break and crush all these. And as you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom. But some of the firmness of iron shall be in it, just as you saw iron mixed with the soft clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. As you saw the iron mixed with soft clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage, but they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever. Just as you saw that a stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. A great God has made known to the king what shall be after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation sure. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and paid homage to Daniel, and commanded that an offering and an incense be offered up to him. The king answered and said to Daniel, Truly your God is God of gods and Lord of kings, and a revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery. Then the king gave Daniel high honors and many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. Daniel made a request of the king, and he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel remained at the king's court. This is the word of the Lord. Daniel had been put in an apostolic position. Why is that? Do you remember who Daniel was? He was one of these nobles, these young sons of Israel who were carried into exile. If you turn back to chapter 1, Nebuchadnezzar besieged Jerusalem, captured the people, stripped the vessels from the temple, and took them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and placed the vessels in the treasury of his God. Then they took from the royal family and the nobility youths of good appearance and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace, and taught them the literature and the language of the Chaldeans, assigned them to learn and to become part of his court. And they were supposed to eat of the best food there was. But Daniel, amongst them, they were to be educated for 3 years, and at the end of the time, they were to stand before the king and receive appointments. Among them were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, of the tribe of Judah. The chief of the eunuchs gave them these names, we heard both versions. Daniel, he called Belshazzar. Hananiah, he called Shadrach. Mishael, he called Meshach, and Azariah, he called Abednego. And these young men chose to be faithful to God's edict to not take food given to idols, and said, no, we'll go with just vegetables, we'll be fine, because all the meat that is given to us has been offered to idols beforehand. They said, there's no way you're going to be healthy there. You're shooting yourself in the foot kind of thing. I said, no, we need to be faithful to the Lord. We'll still serve, we'll still learn, we'll do everything else that's required of us, but we need to be faithful to our God first. And the Lord blessed that. So throughout the book of Daniel, we see this Daniel and his friends having to find the line between service in this nation to which they were taken, in exile, to a king that they didn't want to be serving, and service to their God, who calls them to be faithful. And somehow, with God's grace, they find the line. Right? Sometimes gets them in huge trouble. But God honors their faithfulness and answers. And the first example here we are given, after they survive and they're healthier than all the other guys, is they are part now of the administration, and those considered wise, right? The Magi, the wise men of this kingdom. And all the wise men were either going to live and be given great honor or die if they could answer what this king's dream was. Now that's pretty crazy, isn't it? The king said, okay, I've had dreams, I don't like them, but instead of just going to them and saying, here's the dream, what does it mean? Which is what they had been trained to do, was interpret dreams and interpret all sorts of different things like sacrifices and entrails and things that we now consider very gross. They would do to try and figure out what the future was. But the king goes beyond that. He says, not just, if you're really wise guys, right? If you're really wise, you'll not only be able to tell me the interpretation, but you'll be able to tell me what the dream was without me telling you what it was. How many of us are that skeptical? If you're really, really wise, if you're really a prophet, you'll not just tell me what it means, you'll tell me what it was without me telling you what it was. But he puts this, instead of just going, okay, you messed up, you couldn't figure it out, too bad. He says, if you can't tell me what my dream was and what the interpretation was, everyone who's considered a wise man is going to die. Everyone is going to be killed. And the magicians, the sorcerers, these administrators, these officials all went, that is impossible. I guess we better get ready to die, because there's no way, absolutely no way this can be answered. Because, yeah, we're trained in lots of things, but we can't read your mind. It's impossible. And even Daniel was going, what? Because they were also included in that edict that now they're all going to be killed because they were part of the administration. We don't think of it that way these days. We don't have magicians, right, as part of the administration, or prophets. But those who were gifted administrators were also considered wise enough to be able to understand all things. And so they were lumped together. The things that were seen and the things that were unseen were both considered the purview of the wise men, the leaders. So that's where our text today kind of started. Daniel has just found out that everyone's supposed to die, including him and his friends and all the others. He goes, just wait. Give me time. Now, I don't know about you, but so often when we're faced with these crisis situations, we go, oh, I have to answer immediately. He had the wisdom to say, give me time. He asks for time to answer, and then he goes and asks his friends to pray with him. He says, please pray with me that God will give me favor. He didn't do it alone. He takes on the responsibility, but he didn't do it alone. He asked his friends, his community, to pray with him. And I think that's something that we need to look to as well. When we need wisdom, it doesn't have to be just us and God. We can ask for the support of the community to pray with us and for us as we seek wisdom, as we seek God's guidance. Because God does honor that. When we are joined in prayer around a common thing, God answers. And God reveals to Daniel what is humanly impossible. Right? He gives him the content of the vision, the content of the dream, and the interpretation. God is the one to whom belongs all wisdom and might, not the rulers of this world, but to God. And he raises up rulers and brings them down again. And he gives this confounding image, right? We get this term, having feet of clay, from this dream. Right? When we can be all, we have a head of gold and a feet of clay. We all have feet of clay. There's always something in our lives that is our weak point, even though the top is shiny. That's not exactly what this is talking about, but that's how we have interpreted it over the years and gotten this picture, right? It's not a statue of solid gold. There's a weak point in this one. Now, what is the interpretation? That there were going to be kingdoms coming after. And it did happen this way. If you look back at the history of Babylon, of the Assyrian Empire as well, you can see this happening. But this final vision, the final part of the stone that destroys, that becomes a mountain, that's still coming to be. Something that God does that no human can do. Now, how do we apply this in our lives? I know I don't have a whole lot of time to talk about it, but I want you to think about it. How do we apply this in our lives? I think part of it is that we need to look to God, right? For all the struggles in our lives. We need to look to the Lord for wisdom. It's very tempting to go out and look at everything around and go, it's impossible, I'm just going to throw up my hands and give up. That would have been an option for Daniel and the rest. They could have said, okay, c'est la vie, 'tis what it is, I guess I'm dead. Okay? They just gave up. No. But they also didn't make anything up, right? That would have been a dangerous, very dangerous way. It doesn't tell us that anyone tried making anything up. They knew